Welcome to the Forces Sports Show and a special edition from the Inter-Services Snow Sports Championships. Coming up on today's show, the competition is fierce with some big titles up for grabs at Meribel 2019. We'll be bringing you the best moments as the Forces' finest enjoy their special week in the French Alps.
Away from the Inter-Services Championships, paying tribute, the Navy's rugby players mark the passing of teammate Kyle Mason. Fighting back, the junior footballers of the senior service show their mettle against the RAF.
The annual Forces Fiesta in Meribel is one of the highlights of the military sporting calendar. This is the 13th year in a row the best skiers, telemarkers and snowboarders from all three services have gathered at this world-class resort. Across the week, around 150 competitors have taken to the slopes with individual and team titles at stake. Our action roundup starts with the snowboarders. The snowboarders treated to near perfect conditions for the border cross. Easy on the eye, but by no means easy. The results went the way of the Army, a double in fact for Army Sergeants Chris Looker and Lisa Quinn.
This course definitely suited me. It was more preferable to goofy riders, and that's how I ride, so that's my advantage. It's fast, and there was a few harder obstacles going down, so it's good.
We've started extending our training a little bit. We do 2 weeks now prior to coming out. We used to only do one, and we've got some excellent coaches and previous riders as well. We always pass on the knowledge. We've got a really supportive team. It's not just about the coaches, but every single rider helps each other, gives each other tips all the time, and we're just always watching out for each other. And it's just really, really good vibe, and it keeps you pumped and keeps you going.
There's a lot to be said about the Meribel nightlife, but you can't really beat cowbells at dusk, the standard accompaniment to the parallel giant slalom.
One is ready! Attention!
This evening of racing came hot on the heels of the snowboard cross, and although it was never ideal to have the two events within hours of each other, it did nothing to dampen the spirits or the sport. In fact, in the case of men's winner Ross Taylor, it gave him the chance to immediately turn the tables on Chris Looker, who only hours earlier had beaten him in the border cross.
Yeah, it was good to get one back on Chris. Like you say, Chris is a great racer. It's good to go up against one of my a great snowboard friend, and it was tight racing throughout the night. So yeah, really happy to come away with a win.
On his way to victory, Ross took out the number 1 seed Paddy Morris in the semi-final. There was nothing between them in the first run, but sadly the RAF rider fell in the second.
Like you say, all the boys and the girls, they're at such a high level now. The margins are so small, but I just try and block that out and do what I need to do to, come away with the result. And I was lucky enough to do that today. So yeah, really happy.
It was even more nail-biting in the women's competition. RAF team captain and Inter-Services stalwart Claire Collis was pushed to the limit by the Australian Defence Force rider Megan McDermott. Claire grabbed a slim lead of 0.21 seconds in the first run of the final, but Megan pipped her to the post in the second run. But it wasn't enough, the RAF wing commander winning by just 1/100th of a second.
Yes, so we had 2 finals in one day, which isn't usual for the Inter-Services. We had the border cross this morning, and unfortunately someone fell just nearby me, which took me out too. So yeah, I'm glad and pleased to have made up for it this afternoon, or this evening I should say.
The competition ended in flares and the inevitable snowballs. Over at DC Area 43, the light was the only flat thing about the slopestyle competition. Whether they played it safe or in most cases went big, it's always such an impressive spectacle. 12 riders made it to the finals, with Ross Taylor, Matty Hanna and Ian Sanderson reaching the podium. Ross puts his win down to tricks like this one.
I think maybe just my last trick. Maybe in my first run I landed quite a clean, solid backside 7, and I don't think anyone else was spinning quite as many degrees of rotation. So I think that was what won it. Yeah, the rest of the course I wasn't so good, so I relied on my kicker game to secure the result. So yeah.
Elsewhere, it was another Army double in the Alpine downhill. Sapper Ewan Kick won the men's race, knocking the Royal Navy's James French into the runner-up position by just 0.05 of a second.
There's always a progression. You're trying to get kind of 1 second, 2 seconds quicker each year. Obviously it comes hard with the army stuff, kind of juggling like my trade courses and stuff over the summer, which was 7 months long, and then coming back on the snow was a little weird, because probably 7 months probably the longest time I've been off skis in 15 years, so yeah, that's a tough one. But yeah, I mean, the support from the Royal Engineers and the Army is massive, so it kind of makes it possible for me.
Meanwhile, Lieutenant Sophie Nichols took gold in the women's race.
It was quite nice today because there was less powder, so you could take the line that you wanted to take rather than worrying about coming out the course and just getting down safe, so you could just push it a little bit more today.
And there were a couple of early, the first two girls down in fact didn't finish, and we had a blow bag at one point. What did go through your head at that point when you're at the top at the start gate?
It's quite nerve-wracking, knowing that you're the sort of next victim possibly in the next sort of minute and a half, depends on your next 12 months of your life. But you just really have to focus, and I've been there, I know what it's like, and I just stay in my bubble and just concentrate actually about engaging and everything I've been taught in skiing to get down safest rather than skiing afraid.
Telemark is the fastest improving sport at these championships. The discipline requires competitors to demonstrate good technique as well as deliver fast times. And the competitors here in Meribel certainly didn't disappoint. Everyone loves a rivalry in sport, and there's one developing at the top of military telemark. James French, a GB development skier as a youngster, only joined the Navy a few years ago, but his name is pretty much always in the top 3 across 2 disciplines. His run, as ever, was imperious, but it was Rob Houston's day today, the Army lieutenant grabbing first place by 0.14 of a second in the telemark giant slalom.
Yeah, a surprise to me, a surprise to James, and quite a nice change. Hopefully it will continue that way.
In third place was the Royal Navy's Gordy McRae, with 2 more Navy racers and 1 Army making up the top 6. Over 2 runs, 21 competitors took to the hill with no disqualifications and no non-finishers. After the Classic, next on the telemark schedule was the sprint. 22 men lined up to compete for the title, with GB skiers Robbie Houston for the Army and the Royal Navy's James French favourites for the title. After James fell in both races yesterday, he had some demons to exercise. A phenomenal run allowed him to pip Robbie Houston to take gold.
Yesterday wasn't a great day. Crashed in the Alpine race in the morning and in the telemark race just after the jump. So, yeah, a bit of a relief to get down on my feet.
Another competitor happy to complete the course on his feet was Lance Corporal Conor MacArthur. The Royal Marine has only had 4 weeks telemark experience, but says everyone should give it a whirl.
For someone who's only just learned to telemark, it's a very steep learning curve. Having just sort of been competent, sort of sliding around, doing telemark positions, to then racing down a black run with the world watching, it's pretty intense. All it is just getting into a lower position, and once you sort of crack the weighting of the both skis, it comes quite quickly.
This is a test case here.
This discipline has massively improved in the military just in the last decade.
It's not even warmed up yet.
The Chalky Whites and Nobby Clarks of old inspired a generation of dedicated telemarkers to push their sport forward. One could argue that Ewan Davis, who's still competing and finished second today, is also one of that inspirational group.
It's been a massive improvement across the board. If you look at the behind Robbie, you look at all the times, they are so close. They're so close. It's and that's down to the British Army the British Championships, which is also the Army and the Navy Championships, and the coaching that's going on there, but also the RAF are coming along. The RAF are skiing far better each year, and I think the result, the standard has gone up.
Now there's more action, interviews, features and results from the week in Meribel available on our website at forces.net. But that's all from me. Now it's back to the Forces Sports Show studio.
The Royal Navy's rugby players have been paying tribute to one of their own. Kyle Mason died last weekend, aged just 33. John Knighton reports from the team's first match of the season against the students of Oxford University.
There are times when sports competition pales into insignificance. The rugby players of the Royal Navy and Oxford University stood for a minute's silence to remember Kyle Mason, who died at the weekend, and his family. Mason had 29 caps, their most capped front row forward. His loss felt by everyone.
I've known Carl for at least 10 to 12 years as his coach originally, then director of rugby and now chairman. And it really is, difficult for those players. But, they've come together, they're hurting inside, but they know that actually, playing rugby, pulling that Navy jersey on is exactly what Kyle was all about. They're playing as much for him as themselves, particularly this evening.
This was the Navy's first outing of the season against a spirited Oxford side, beaten by the Army last week. And it was they who took a deserved lead at a sustained pressure. Captain and hooker John Henry going over for the converted try. But the Navy gradually pulled themselves into the game and went ahead with 2 tries at the end of the first half. Camped on the students' line, Jack Basher almost crossing over, but it was down to Eldon Myers to finish the job. Then a lovely flowing move finished by Matt Bowden to take the Navy into a 10-7 lead at half-time. In the second half, the Navy came close to extending that lead on several occasions, but they were defied by the students' tough defending, who held off the senior service until the last few moments, when Jared Hayler scored under the post, converted by Nathan Huntley after some great forward play. A good result for the team in white on the toughest of weeks.
Been a very tough few days for some of us in the squad and some of the boys that knew Carl and some of the boys that didn't. It'll take a long time to get over it, but rugby-wise, boys pulled together and did the shirt proud.
This is what he would have wanted tonight. You go out there and win your first game of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would. I think, definitely would have wanted it to happen like that. I think potentially me and him played our first game together here 12 years ago.
I think it was important that we got out and played tonight, and for a lot of the boys who were very close to him, and some of us have been a friend for a long time, and he's very much a part of the Navy Rugby family. I think it was important that we give him that send-off by playing and respecting what Carl was about as well as Navy Rugby.
There'll be no tougher start than this to a rugby season for the Royal Navy, but if only in memory of Carl Mason, they'll have huge resolve for the rest of it.
The Royal Navy's footballers produced a thrilling comeback in the opening game of the Inter-Services Under-23 Championships. They found themselves 2 goals behind to the RAF early in their match at Portsmouth, but fought back to claim a hard-earned victory. The Royal Air Force enjoyed a super start in this Under-23's Inter-Services clash with the senior service. Liam Wood was fed the ball in the dark blues area, and he slotted his shot into the bottom corner for a 1-0 lead inside the opening 5 minutes. A short while later, the Navy fell further behind. This time, a calamity from keeper James Eden allowed Alan Woodcock to steal in and put the Light Blues 2-0 up after just 12 minutes. The home side were facing the prospect of a long afternoon. To cap a frantic first 15 minutes of the fixture, the Navy rallied to cut the deficit. From a corner, Ben Briers kept the pressure on the airmen, and with the ball falling at the feet of Lewis Cooper, the HMS Queen Elizabeth-based man slotted it home. As the first half developed, Air Force keeper Matt Cape was now the busier of the 2 shot stoppers. He was alert to thump the ball from the on-rushing Gino Garside, but the senior service weren't done. Seconds later, Cape was again called into action to help the airmen hold onto their 2-1 lead going into the break. A 2-minute spell early in the second half saw the Navy not only draw level, but take the lead. First, Garside ran at the heart of the Air Force defence. With the ball only partially cleared, Briers headed home Rhys Williams' inch-perfect cross. From the restart, the Navy quickly won back possession, and Williams saw his shot steered to safety by an ever-besieged Cape. From the resulting corner, Cooper stole in front of his man to head home and give the Navy the advantage. They would never surrender. The airmen failed to engineer a clear-cut goal-scoring opportunity in order to snatch a draw. The closest they came was in the final few minutes of the match, but their hosts held firm. The Navy could be crowned Inter-Services Under-23 champions when they meet the Army in Aldershot in 2 weeks' time. It's not just in Meribel where there's a huge gathering of Forces winter sports specialists. Ruhpolding in Bavaria has been staging Exercise Rucksack, the annual Forces, Nordic and Biathlon Championships. From there, Rob Olver reports.
In a world-class biathlon arena, 200 military athletes are tested to the limit. Exercise Rucksack is the Army Inter-Service and British National Nordic and Ski Championship. Biathlon is a sport like no other. Mile after mile of up and down cross-country skiing requires tremendous stamina. Then shooting at targets on a range demands skilled marksmanship. Lance Corporal Adam Peacock is a Royal Marine Arctic warfare specialist and feels quite at home.
1 minute you're out of the tracks, pushing yourself, pushing your body to its physical limits, and then the next minute you're having to come in, calm yourself, compose yourself, and mentally focus on the range and try and hit all the targets.
Peacock has represented Great Britain in biathlon, and he's not alone. Service personnel make up the overwhelming majority of the British squad. Without military involvement, it said, it would be difficult to imagine a GB team. Before he joined the Army, Lance Corporal Adam Williams had never heard of biathlon. Now the Royal Logistic Corps soldier has raced in International Biathlon Union competition, and he has greater ambitions still.
I've represented my country on the IBU Cup level. There's still a level above that, which is the World Cup, and that's what I'm aiming to achieve, and in later years to hopefully represent in the Olympics.
In the 1970s and 80s, British Olympic biathlon squads routinely included a dozen service personnel. Today the numbers have dwindled to 2 or 3. There are now hopes of reversing the trend. Military biathlon chiefs have 3 key aims in the coming years: a development programme to give talented young skiers a real chance to go to the Olympics, to boost the number of women competitors, and to give members of each of the 3 armed services equal opportunities to pursue biathlon.
Come on, Angus, come on, Arthur, let's go!
It will mean convincing military commanders of the sport's value.
You have to argue quite strongly with those that have never seen it and how arduous and challenging Nordic skiing particularly is. To break into the top level, they've got to be on full-time training, and that is quite difficult in a resource-constrained, smaller armed forces to give a lot of athletes that much time off.
It's my first time here, but I'm really impressed. It's so well organised, really professionally run. It's important that all commanding officers and everyone who's got an opportunity to release people, they need to get the young people out here to take part. Give it a go. If they enjoy it, who knows, they could be the next Olympian.
For a few, military biathlon is a doorway to the Great Britain team. For most, it's simply a challenge which can help the military day job.
Skiing at this level, which is quite a high level of sport, it's massively translatable into the Army, and I've really enjoyed that aspect of doing this at a high standard and then taking that back to my unit.
It's good to be challenging the guys I've been competing with year after year, and a lot of them guys have been on the national circuit.
Less than a fifth of this year's competitors are women. The sports organisers now hope to attract more people like Lance Bombardier Georgina Kelly.
Anyone can do it from the military. Any background you can have. It's there, anyone can just put their name down and do it, and it is literally a fantastic opportunity.
Biathlon's military application seems obvious, but the big question is how the sport will fare as the British Armed Forces shrink and commitments mount.
And that is it for this week. Don't forget you can see all the action as we get it on forces.net and this show and more on YouTube. We'll leave you with more highlights from Meribel 2019. Bye for now.